As the Himalayas rose, the forces of erosion kept pace, leading to the formation of a contiguous lower range of hills known as the Shivaliks, made up of erosion material from the still rising main range. Their sediments reflect the history of the upthrust of the Himalayas. Numerous fossil finds allow the Shivaliks to be dated with accuracy and tell us more of the comparative youth of the Himalayas. Here at the Shivalik Fossil Park in Sanketi near Nahan, the Geological Survey of India runs an establishment where one can see these fossils, or rather some of these fossils, in a gloomy hall constructed of corrugated cement sheets where photography is absolutely prohibited. There is no reference, of course, to artificial light or natural light, which might have had some reference in terms of photographing works of art, perhaps. But here there is a situation where the only way one can get permission to take pictures of these fossils is from a GSI official in an entirely different state. But nevertheless, we did manage to find one fossil just lying around, which you can see.
The Shivaliks, also known as the Sub-Himalaya or the foothills, run in a continuous belt from Jammu through the Kangra Valley and then on through the Sirmaur district to Dehradun, and further on the Bhabbar tracts of Garhwal and Kumaon. Continuing through Nepal, the only break comes at Sikkim, and then on again through Arunachal. Their width varies from a few kilometers to around 40 kilometers at different places.
Longitudinal valleys running between the Shivaliks and the main Himalayan mountain range to the north are called Dune Valleys. And the gravel brought down into such valleys by the streams on both sides are called dune gravel. The best example of all this is, of course, Dehradun. But over the years, dense growth of sal and riverine forest have been cleared to make way for cultivation, for housing, for roads, for civilization.
The Shivalik Hills are well developed along the southern edge of Himachal Pradesh, from the Kangra Valley in a broad belt to the Sirmaur region on the border with UP. The landscape is typically low rolling hills, bisected by innumerable gullies, seasonal streams known as chos, which drain this region. Once peppered with small principalities and kingdoms, straddling major trade routes in and out of the interior Himalayan regions, they prospered till their eventual eclipse commenced during the British Raj. The archetypal romantic landscape, as immortalized by the Kangra school of miniature painting, the Shivalik countryside can be enchanting.
Sirmaur is one of the lesser-known areas of Himachal, and at this time of the year, in December, it is also one of the most beautiful. Traveling through this area is a rare treat that offers one an opportunity to familiarize oneself with the people, the cultures, the flora and the fauna of the Shivalik region. Sirmaur is littered with such crumbling mansions and ruined havelis, testament to their turbulent history. As with most such hill states, this history is a tapestry of valor, of deceit, and of romance. Perpetually at war with their neighbors, these states eventually came under the dominion of the Mughals and then later of the Sikh Raj. In Sirmaur, the ruling dynasty came to the throne sometime in the 10th century AD at Sirmaur near Paonta Sahib. Later, the town of Sirmaur itself was destroyed by floods, it is said due to the curse of a dancing girl whom the Raja cheated. And then even later, the ruling dynasty caused to be built the hill town of Nahan, which remained the seat of princely administration for the next few centuries.
Built like an Austrian hill town with its cobbled streets and orderly air, it remains a beautiful town, in spite of the usual modern-day problems of overconstruction.
Nahan was a pretty advanced town for its time, with an underground sewage system, with cobbled streets, and with an elected municipal corporation, only the second in the country after Calcutta. Modern-day Nahan retains some of this character with its narrow alleys in the old quarter and its marvelous old havelis and palace. And it has developed into something of a fascinating destination with very few tourists.
The havelis and palaces of Nahan are steeped in an aura of lost grandeur. The elaborate drawing rooms and reception areas harken back to an era of shikar, grand balls, and receptions of state. For the exteriors of their palaces, the rulers preferred to go back to their Rajasthani origins. This applied to their personal living areas as well. This room is wall-to-wall lined with murals done in the Rajasthani style. family's inner courtyard contrasts sharply with this room straight from the Paris of the last century.
The ruling family of Sirmaur they've come from Jaisalmer, and the ruins of 8th century, which was found in a place called Sirmaurital, and there they say that the family was already there, but because of certain reasons, some say it was a curse of a dancing girl, some say there was epidemics there, and the other people say because of floods, the entire place was washed away, and then the family again they made Rajban as their capital. And then later on, in 1621, Raja Karam Prakash made Nahan as his capital. We are really honored, and we were blessed by Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and we were given a Siri Sahib by Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and this was the time when Mahi Prakash was the ruler. Guru Gobind Singh Ji spent about 3 years in Sirmaur, and in his book Vachitra Natika, he's mentioned that the best time of his life was spent in Sirmaur. And that time only our ancestor, that time Mahi Prakash, was the one who supported Guru Gobind Singh Ji, while rest all the hill states were against him, like your Tiri Gadwal, your Nalagad, and all the other states were against him except my ancestors that time, who was Mahi Prakash. And because of that, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, he gave us a Siri Sahib and gave us a Vardhan that till the time liquor and smoke or tobacco is not in your house, you people will flourish.
The town itself reflects this eclectic mix of architectural styles so typical of British India. Nahan is surprisingly home to a century-old clock, which still works the way it did the day it was commissioned. Mechanical arts flourished under the Rajas, and this tradition is still alive, passed down through the generations by the keepers of the clock, or as by the gunsmiths in the main marketplace, who takes an inordinate pride in his work. The prime cause for the backwardness of this area is a reduction in soil fertility and productivity due to massive soil erosion.
Ecologically, the Shivaliks have a very interesting history. Prior to the middle of the last century, these forests were entirely covered with a lush tangle of pine and acacia forests. The floors were carpeted with luxuriant undergrowth. Pheasant species and deer flourished amidst crystal clear perennial streams. And then, within 2 generations of the Anglo-Sikh Wars of 1845 and 1849, the entire scene changed. The Sardars and the kings, the Rajas, who owned these hunting lands in the Shivaliks, were evicted, and the lands were handed over to the villagers. While an admirable notion in itself, this was in fact a minor anarchy, completely lacking in any regulatory mechanism. Unrestricted tree cutting and overgrazing stripped the area, and heavy rains did the rest. The loosely cemented morass soils of the Shivaliks were washed away, giving way to a badlands topography of knife-edged ridges. Some areas that fared better, however, such as Sirmaur, did so because they survived well into the British era as states.
The Shivalik mountain system, which covers over 20,000 square kilometers in the states of Himachal, Punjab and Haryana, is now under a constant threat of erosion and floods. The Shivaliks are a part of the Himalayan mountain chain that have been neglected for a long time, though the problems and the conservation measures required were identified as early as 1895. Today, most of the Shivalik regions are a scene of dusty, rolling topography, devoid of vegetative cover. Monsoon torrents known as chos are quite common in the area. Numbering in the hundreds, these chos play havoc during the monsoons. They cut across fertile fields and spread sheets of sand over the flooded areas. The width of some of these chos is more than a kilometer, and a flash flood can bring enormous boulders tumbling down. Also to be toted up is the annual loss of life and property due to flash floods that disgorge from steep, rough, highly erodible catchments.
There are many such streams in the Dune Valley too. With unfailing regularity every year during the monsoon rains, they swell and flood the fields and forests on their banks, destroying fertile land and rendering it as wasteland by spreading their sand and gravel. Over the last 60 years, Jharkhand Rao has enlarged its bed from 50 meters to about half a kilometer, and the care and shisham trees on the floodpan are all gone.
Which brings us to the question, can the Shivalik still be saved? Apparently so, if the efforts of Central Soil and Water Conservation Research Institute are any indication. The Sukho-Majri model of conservation is today known internationally for the concept of social fencing pioneered by it. Basically, people protect the land against grazing, and water harvesting structures controlled the gully erosion. 3 check dams could bring life back into the 100 hectares of farmland in village Sukho-Majri. Other such village-based schemes have proved very successful in both Punjab and Haryana, but Himachal, sadly, has lagged far behind. While more than 21% of its area falls into the Shivalik belt, efforts to conserve and regreen have been negligible. Some distance away from Nahan is the Renault Car Lake, these days being promoted as a tourism destination. Set amidst the low hills, clothed in verdant foliage, the lake is the stuff an average city dweller's romantic dream of a lake is made of. Hopefully, the Renault Car Lake will not go the way of other accessible Himalayan lakes like the Naini and Dal lakes. Experiments have shown that a combination of complete protection and integrated structural and vegetative measures are the answer to the problem. Grazing should be substituted with stall feeding. These hills are essentially quite productive and can be restored to their past glory within a period of 25 to 50 years, promoting wildlife and increasing avenues for recreation. The people of the Shivaliks today have experienced a slide in the quality of the environment during their lifetime. In fact, speeded up erosion has made the hills themselves volatile. But their ancestors came to a different land. While some people moved up from the plains, people in Sirmaur side are an interesting mix of plains people and the high altitude settlers moving down the Yamuna Valley. Like people everywhere, they have their complaints, and this citizen of Nahan isn't any too impressed with Nahan's track record vis-a-vis an underground drainage system and an elected municipality.
Nahan is one of the most neglected towns in Himachal Pradesh. During Maharaja Shamsher Prakash's time, about more than 100 years before, we had a underground drainage system which is non-functional now, and nobody is bothered to improve upon it. So is the case with the water supply scheme here. Though we have got the augmented supply scheme has been launched very shortly, but the residence houses located at a higher altitude, they are not getting water even now because there is distribution system is not functioning properly, and the government is yet to sanction the money for the distribution system.
And he has a valid point. Booming populations have rooted to the dustbin civic services catering to the demand loads of the last century. Another dune valley, the Patli Dune, forms part of the Corbett National Park. Thus, this is one of the only regions of the Shivaliks to retain its forest cover and its diversity of wildlife species. Here in the valley of the Ramganga, we have a chance to observe species which were once fairly prevalent across the entire Shivalik belt. Thick grasslands clothe the valley floor, while the slopes bear verdant sal forests. Ungulates like the barking deer and the spotted deer thrive. Tigers are plenty, and the rivers are flush with mahseer and the occasional waiting gharial.